Do not break windows.
I'm right on the 82nd floor. Please remain calm.
Reports of an explosion of some sort at the World Trade Center.
It is February 1993. The attack on New York's World Trade Center kills 6 people, wounds 1,000, but fails to destroy the Twin Towers. The masterminds of this attack are all living among us. They are determined to get it right the next time. December 1992. In Oklahoma City and around the country, the spirit of Christmas is brightened by a sense of relief. The US is beginning to emerge from a recession. But on Christmas Day, at the city's convention center, a very different kind of spirit prevails. This footage shows the annual gathering of the Muslim Arab Youth Association. A TV reporter decides to see what's happening.
I had discovered there was a radical Islamic convention with groups representing every single organization that I had read about, but never suspected that they were present in the United States.
In an auditorium filled with supporters, the speakers call for a holy war or jihad against Jews and Christians. They blame the West and Israel for oppressing Muslims around the world. The organizers are even selling children's coloring books, such as this one, extolling martyrdom. From a payphone inside the convention center, the reporter calls his contacts in the FBI counterterrorism department. He describes the scene.
And they said, "We don't know what you're talking about." And I said, "I'm here, I'm witnessing it. These are the groups. There's Hamas, there's the Islamic Jihad, there's the Muslim Brotherhood. They're making speeches in Arabic. They're calling for jihad. Are you not aware of this?" And they said, "We don't know what you've been smoking."
The FBI takes no known action based on the reporter's tip. But in cities all across America, extremist groups are busy recruiting followers and honing a message of hatred.
I think that picture of the network of radical Islamic groups operating thoroughly below the radar screen in the United States tells the story of 9/11.
Atlanta. A Palestinian radical is on a fundraising tour, detailing his dark vision of jihad.
Blood must flow. There must be widows. There must be orphans.
Detroit. This event is hosted by a group called the Islamic Charity Project International. One of its main speakers is a blind Egyptian cleric calling for Islam to rule the world.
We conquer the land of infidels, and we spread Islam by calling the infidels to Allah.
In Chicago, Pittsburgh, Tucson, and elsewhere, the radical preachers insist that the jihad will succeed.
Oh, brothers, after Afghanistan, nothing in the world is impossible for us anymore.
This Arab preacher is carrying his message of hate into the American heartland. But on the other side of the globe, he and a partner are also busy creating a jihad network. A network that will eventually plan and execute the deadliest act of terrorism in history. Afghanistan, 1980. It is here that the road to 9/11 begins. Afghan rebels, known as Mujahideen, or Holy Warriors, launch a guerrilla campaign against the occupying Soviet army. Muslims from other nations join the fight. They are determined to expel the Soviets from a Muslim land. Just across the border in Pakistan is the city of Peshawar. Pakistan supports the rebels, and Peshawar becomes a haven for those drawn to the Holy War. The city is abuzz with arms dealers, drug dealers, clerics, wounded warriors, and CIA operatives.
I always thought it, in those years, looked to me a lot like the bar scene in Star Wars. I mean, it was just a very weird, surreal existence.
Among the thousands of Muslims who would answer the call to jihad, this young man, 6 feet 5 inches tall, dressed in the baggy trousers and long linen shirt of an Afghan peasant. He is Osama bin Laden. He is 24 years old. Bin Laden is the son of a billionaire construction magnate in Saudi Arabia. But here the young man sleeps on a mattress on the floor. His charitable work earns him the nickname Samaritan in the refugee camps and hospitals. Murfreesboro, North Carolina, spring 1983. As the Afghan war rages, another young Muslim is finding his own way to the Holy War, starting from a tiny Baptist college. A group of Muslim students gathers in this dormitory to pray. In the Islamic tradition, they leave their shoes outside the door. Other students would come and steal the shoes and throw them in the campus lake. Among the targets of the practical joke is this engineering student, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. He's the intelligent and charming son of an imam, or Islamic priest. Khalid grew up in Kuwait, but his family comes from a remote region of Pakistan, and in Kuwait they were often treated like second-class citizens. His college years only deepen his resentment. When Khalid graduates, he heads for Pakistan. There, he will join one of his 3 brothers who is running a charity for the Afghan rebels.
Not a chance, mate.
Well, and you would have, would you?
This Warhammer, you go straight through that.
Short range. This will go through flesh like a knife through butter.
Yeah, but this flintlock works.
A bit noisy. With its beauty, you don't get a sound. Sorry.
This has got to be the perfect weapon.
Follow Monty and Stuart as they settle their argument. A brand new series that tests the ultimate in weaponry over the centuries to reveal the perfect weapon on National Geographic Channel.
Monty? Monty?
They've taken the long way round. Now Ewan McGregor and his best mate Charlie tackle the long way down.
I feel like I've been punched.
From the top of Scotland to the tip of Africa.
I just feel like I'm on a ride with my mates.
Same 2 blokes, brand new bikes, and a lot more adventure. Long Way Down. Sunday at 9 on National Geographic Channel.
They are wonders of construction. Icons that have come to symbolize the cities in which they stand. Now, meet the latest marvel to join their ranks. To celebrate the 29th Olympic Games in China, National Geographic Channel presents the making of a modern engineering masterpiece. Megastructures, the Beijing Olympic Stadium, starts China's Olympic special, Monday at 8.
It's one of the oldest and most controversial storybooks in history. It tells tales of miracles and divine intervention. Yet for many, these stories are more than mere religious fable. They're historic fact. Over 24 hours, we dissect the greatest biblical stories in history in a modern-day quest for the Holy Grail of the gospel truth. Riddles of the Bible Marathon, next weekend on National Geographic Channel.
1984. Young Osama bin Laden uses some of his family fortune and contacts to finance a plan to create an international jihad network. It's the brainchild of radical cleric Abdullah Azzam. Azzam is a Palestinian whose hometown was occupied by Israel after the Arabs' crushing defeat in the Six-Day War. More than anyone, it is Azzam who has inspired Muslims, including bin Laden, to head to Afghanistan. The men give their organization an unassuming name, the Office of Services. The headquarters in Pakistan supplies arms and training to volunteers headed to the front. 1986. By now, the Afghan war is turning in favor of the rebels. But Arab volunteers play only a small part. By far the biggest factor is a shoulder-fired missile called the Stinger, courtesy of the CIA. Behind the scenes, bin Laden and Azzam are opening branch offices of their jihad organization in 35 countries around the world. The US will become a main focus, with a flagship outpost at this mosque, Al Farouk, in Brooklyn, New York. They also set up shop in Boston, Chicago, Nashville, Atlanta, Sacramento, and 32 other cities. Many of the outposts are no more than a single individual, raising money from an apartment or office. But the Jihad Network is laying a foundation for the future. It's creating an army of young men ready to fight the next battle in the Holy War.
Jihad became a practical concept. It became approachable, accessible. It became something that empowered and mobilized the young masses within the Muslim world to start practicing a violent holy war.
By the spring of 1987, Osama bin Laden has grabbed a rifle and joined the fighting. Soviet troops corner his band of Arab volunteers in the rugged hills of eastern Afghanistan in a place called Září. According to eyewitness accounts, one of bin Laden's comrades is Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the young Muslim who studied engineering in North Carolina, and who will become the engineer of 9/11. Soviet artillery and helicopter gunships bombard the men. As legend has it, after a month-long siege, the Arabs forced the Soviets to withdraw. The battle is widely reported in the Arab press. Overnight, the story turns bin Laden into a hero. Poets and singers celebrate the glory of the young Saudi warrior.
This is sheer and utter nonsense. There is about a 15-second piece of footage showing him with a radio and maybe a Kalashnikov hanging on his shoulder, and that's the great warrior.
By the following summer of 1988, it's all but over for the once mighty Red Army. Soviet troops begin to withdraw. The Afghan rebels have won. The victory electrifies the world of radical Islam, and the men who fought the Battle of Září with bin Laden and Azzam become the nucleus of a violent new force. It becomes known as the base. In Arabic, the name is Al-Qaeda.
If not for the anti-Soviet, multinational Afghan jihad, Mujahideen from around the world would not have come to defeat one superpower, and after that to turn their guns against another superpower, the United States.
November 1989. Bin Laden's partner, Abdullah Azzam, is driving to a mosque in Peshawar, Pakistan, with two of his sons. A car bomb explodes, killing them instantly. The murder, never solved, has the hallmarks of a mob assassination. With Azzam out of the way, Bin Laden quickly reorganizes the jihad network around himself. Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, August 1990. Bin Laden has returned home from the Afghan war. He hopes to use his family's vast wealth and political connections to grow his Al-Qaeda network of holy warriors. But the 33-year-old Bin Laden is in for one of the biggest disappointments of his life. August the 2nd, 1990. Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait and threatens the neighboring kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Bin Laden approaches the Saudi government with an offer. He will summon his Arab fighters who battled the Soviets. They will protect the kingdom from the Iraqi invaders. Only holy warriors, says Bin Laden, should defend Islam's holiest sites. Instead, the Saudi royal family chooses the protection offered by US President George Bush.
Bin Laden was politely turned down and told that Kuwait is not Afghanistan. Thank you, don't call us, we'll call you.
The Saudis let US troops use their kingdom as a staging area from which to drive Saddam from Kuwait. For Bin Laden, the US troops massing in the desert are living proof that the United States is the great infidel, and that all US allies in the Middle East are enemies of Allah. He begins to spread the word to his followers that the Saudi royal family must be overthrown. At the same time, Bin Laden's far-flung jihad network is roaring to life. New York, November the 5th, 1990. This 34-year-old Egyptian, named Al-Said Nasser, dons the yarmulke of an observant Jew and pockets a .357 Magnum revolver. Nasser belongs to the Al Farouk Mosque in Brooklyn, a top jihad outpost in the US. Nasser enters a ballroom at this Midtown Manhattan hotel. Rabbi Meir Kahane, head of the tiny but violent Jewish Defense League, is finishing a speech to his followers. As Kahane steps down from the podium, Nasser pulls out the gun, fires twice, and a fatal shot enters the rabbi's throat. Nasser flees the hotel, but an armed postal officer shoots him, and police arrest him.
For the public, and largely for law enforcement, the killing of Kahane was portrayed as one crazy Arab killing one crazy Jew. That wasn't the case.
We all now realize that was really the first major incident on U.S. soil that the radical Islamists conducted, the ones that we currently know today as Al-Qaeda.
FBI and police search Nasser's home here in Cliffside Park, New Jersey. They find more than 1,000 rounds of ammunition, bomb-making formulas, US military training manuals, and a hit list of other prominent Jews. They haul 47 boxes of this material to this police precinct. It's a treasure trove of intelligence. But the authorities, the DA, the NYPD, the FBI, overlook most of it. While the FBI investigates some suspicious individuals at the Al Farouk Mosque, they do not investigate the mosque itself. So they fail to establish that the mosque is being used as a front by a terror cell with connections to bin Laden and his growing jihad network. The next step on the road to 9/11 will be a casual conversation between two boyhood friends who want nothing more than to come to America and blow up buildings.
They've taken the long way round. Now Ewan McGregor and his best mate Charlie tackle the long way down.
I feel like I've been punched.
From the top of Scotland to the tip of Africa.
I just feel like I'm on a ride with my mates.
Same two blokes, brand new bikes, and a lot more adventure. Long Way Down. Sunday at 9 on National Geographic Channel. China, a nation of grandeur and strength, proclaiming its power through some of the greatest monuments on Earth. Now enter the land of the mighty dragon as it roars to the forefront of engineering ingenuity. As the Olympics begin, visit China's bold innovations in modern megastructures. An astounding showcase of China's architectural triumphs. China Olympics Special starts Monday, 4th of August at 8 on National Geographic Channel. It's one of the oldest and most controversial storybooks in history. It tells tales of miracles and divine intervention. Yet for many, these stories are more than mere religious fable. They're historic fact. Over 24 hours, we dissect the greatest biblical stories in history in a modern-day quest for the Holy Grail of the gospel truth. Riddles of the Bible Marathon, next weekend on National Geographic Channel.
Khartoum, Sudan, April 1991. Osama bin Laden moves with his 4 wives, numerous children, and a core group of supporters here to this poor capital city in East Africa. Bin Laden is now living in exile from his native Saudi Arabia. He cuts a deal with the radical Islamic government of Sudan. Al-Qaeda provides money and weapons in return for sanctuary. Pakistan, summer 1992. A young Pakistani named Ramzi Yusuf has just finished a course in bomb making at an Al-Qaeda training camp. The 24-year-old, nicknamed the Chemist, likes to wear Armani suits. He holds an electrical engineering degree from a technical college in Wales. He's talking on the phone with a boyhood friend, Abdul Murad. He tells Murad his goal in life: to go to America, blow up buildings, and kill Jews, as many as he can. Murad gives him an idea.
Murad says, well, you know, there are a lot of Jews in New York. And later tells him, you know, there are a lot of Jews who work at the World Trade Center.
From this conversation, an idea takes shape, and a plan is put in motion. New York, September the 1st, 1992. A Pakistani Airlines flight from Karachi lands here at Kennedy Airport. seated in the first-class cabin is Ramzi Youssef. He's traveling with a Palestinian terrorist named Ahmad Ajaj. The two men exit the plane and approach parallel stalls at an immigration post. The 6-foot-tall Youssef, dressed in a 3-piece silk Afghan suit, presents a perfectly forged Iraqi passport. He demands political asylum. When immigration officials question Ajaj, they discover that he's carrying several crudely faked passports and a suitcase stuffed with bomb-making manuals.
If he'd been wearing a T-shirt that said terrorist, he couldn't have been more clear that he was up to no good.
Immigration agents take Ajaj into custody. They assign him a bed at this INS detention facility. But Youssef is allowed into the US and told to appear at an immigration hearing. The men's performance has worked like a charm.
Ajaj creates such a stir and commotion and smokescreen that Ramzi Youssef, the Mozart of terror, is able to slip into America.
Youssef trolls the airport cab stand until he finds a Pakistani driver. He hands the cabbie a slip of paper with an address, 552 Atlantic Avenue, Brooklyn. "Brother, I have just arrived from Karachi," he says. "I have friends who will pay." The driver takes him here to the Al Farouk Mosque. Youssef receives the blessings of a blind Egyptian cleric who is now in charge of the mosque, Sheikh Omar Abdul Rahman. The blind sheikh, as he is known, is an ally of Osama bin Laden. He has approved Youssef's plan to place a truck bomb in the basement of the World Trade Center. Throughout that autumn and winter, Youssef and 3 other members of the Al Farouk Mosque are hard at work inside this storage facility in Jersey City, New Jersey, just across the Hudson River from Manhattan. Under Youssef's direction, they assemble the device they hope will topple the Twin Towers and kill thousands of people. February the 26th, 1993. 2 strands of Islamic terrorism converge for an attack on this symbol of America's global dominance. The blind sheikh provides the manpower and inspiration. Ramzi Youssef, the bomb-making expertise. Hovering in the background is the growing Al-Qaeda network, led by Osama bin Laden. Youssef packs a rented Ryder truck with a volatile mixture of 1,500 pounds of fertilizer, fuel oil, and nitroglycerine. Around noon, he and 3 colleagues park the truck in a garage 2 stories beneath the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Minutes later, Youssef lights the fuse with a cheap cigarette lighter and speeds off. at 12:17 p.m. The bomb rips a 7-story hole right through the tower's core. 6 people are killed. Across the river, Youssef watches a column of smoke rise over lower Manhattan. He knows he has failed. The bomb was not powerful enough. That night, Youssef makes his way to New York's JFK airport. Before the bombing, he had drafted a letter claiming credit for the attack on behalf of what he calls the 5th Battalion of the Liberation Army. According to an FBI source, Youssef calls one of his fellow terrorists from the airport. He dictates a new ending to the letter. It states, "Our calculations were not very accurate this time. However, we promise you that next time it will be very precise. And the Trade Center will be one of our targets." With that, Youssef boards his flight and flies first class to Karachi, Pakistan.
It's hard for me to express to people how dangerous these guys really are, and the dedication and fervor of their beliefs, their extreme desire to want to destroy Western civilization.
Ramzi Yousef is so determined to strike another, more devastating blow against the West that he will now play a key role in hatching the plot that becomes 9/11. Pakistan, July 1994. The US State Department distributes 37,000 matchbooks throughout Pakistan. They have this picture of terrorist Ramzi Yousef on the cover. They promise a $2 million reward for information leading to his capture. Over the past year, since the truck bombing of the World Trade Center, the FBI has discovered bank records and fingerprints showing that Yousef was the mastermind. The young engineer with a weakness for Armani suits is indeed living in his native Pakistan. But Yousef's well protected by the country's radical Islamic community. And he's still stung by his failure to topple the Twin Towers. August 1994. In a deserted warehouse here in the bustling city of Lahore, Pakistan, Yousef is teaching his childhood friend, Abdul Murad, how to build bombs. Yousef calls it making chocolate. Murad has returned to Pakistan after 2 years training at flight schools in Texas, North Carolina, and New York. It was Murad who gave Yousef the idea to bomb the World Trade Center. Now the two men are brainstorming again, coming up with ingenious ways to kill lots of civilians.
At one point, Murad thought, you could take a plane, you could turn a plane into a bomb. You could fly it into a building, and you could kill a lot of people with it.
Karachi, Pakistan. The two young men meet at a restaurant on Tariq Road. They discuss the airplane idea with someone who could help make it happen. That someone is Ramzi Yousef's well-connected uncle, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who studied engineering in North Carolina and then fought alongside Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan. They propose a suicide mission to fly a commercial jet loaded with fuel into CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. Yousef's uncle is intrigued and wants to know more. He presses his nephew Yousef's old friend Murad for details about the length of pilot training, the screening process, even the addresses of US flight schools. The obvious person to fund such a scheme would be Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's fellow Afghan war veteran, Osama bin Laden. Hamburg, Germany, 1994. By now, bin Laden has sway over Arab radicals not only in the Middle East and America, but in Europe as well. Hamburg is home to Islamic radicals who share bin Laden's worldview. In a drab housing complex on this college campus, one of the men who will execute the bloodiest terror attack in history is undergoing a dark transformation. A 27-year-old Egyptian graduate student named Mohammed Atta pads around his tiny apartment in blue flip-flops. Atta comes from a secular middle-class family in Cairo, Egypt. He's in Germany to get a master's degree in urban planning. Atta's hard work, discipline, and technical skills have earned him high marks from his professors.
You know, to impress a German, you have to be a perfectionist. He was a perfectionist in every sense.
But like many other young Arab men, Atta is angry and alienated. He hates the Egyptian regime back home. It's repressive. It's allied with the US, and it's at peace with Israel. While in Hamburg, Atta begins to embrace radical Islam. He wears the same few pieces of clothing every day, cotton trousers and a sweater his mother knitted for him. His roommate sometimes sees Atta sitting alone, eating mashed potatoes straight out of a pot.
When it was full, he'd shove the whole pot in the refrigerator with the fork stuck in it. Take it out the next day, eat some more.
Atta prays 5 times a day, no matter where he is. At the local mosque, he hears talk of jihad and martyrdom. He does not yet know anything about the plot that will become 9/11, but his mind and spirit are preparing for it nonetheless. Khartoum, Sudan, 1994. For the past 3 years, Osama bin Laden has been running Al-Qaeda from his headquarters here in East Africa. Al-Qaeda is now an international terrorist organization with operatives in Egypt, Yemen, Somalia, Bosnia, and Chechnya. At this point, Al-Qaeda begins to appear on the CIA's radar screen. The agency gives the White House a briefing that mentions bin Laden. It calls his headquarters in Sudan the Ford Foundation of Sunni Islamic terrorism, giving grants for violent attacks around the world.
We had a lot of circumstantial evidence. We weren't quite sure what it meant. Was bin Laden really a threat, or was he just another Saudi spendthrift who was throwing money around to radicals?
He seemed to be coming up everywhere. It was like Elvis. Every time you read about a terrorist group in a different country carrying out violent action, you heard the name Osama bin Laden, and you wondered whether it was just sort of a fictional person.
Agents based in Sudan are authorized to keep an eye on bin Laden, but nothing more. Al-Qaeda training camps are terrorist assembly lines, churning out Muslim warriors who then return home, ready to die for the jihad.
For every person you trained, he was supposed to go back and train 1 or 2 persons, and then those people would train someone else, and it kind of grew exponentially.
And these guys are run like an intelligence organization, and we know some of the people who trained them. They have great patience.
By the end of 1994, 3 such patient men, deeply committed to the jihad movement, Ramzi Youssef, his friend Abdul Murad, and his uncle Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, are nurturing the most ambitious terrorist plots in history. Manila, the Philippines, January the 6th, 1995. The mastermind of the World Trade Center truck bombing, Ramzi Youssef, has relocated here from his native Pakistan. In this 6-story building on President Quirino Boulevard, Youssef has set up a terror workshop with his old friend Abdul Murad. He's transformed the kitchen into a bomb factory. As Youssef cooks up explosives by the sink, the concoction accidentally ignites. The acrid smoke drives the 2 men from their apartment. It attracts the attention of the Philippine National Police. Youssef escapes to a nearby karaoke bar, but he sends Murad back to the apartment to retrieve his Toshiba laptop, which he uses to store his plans for terror attacks. Police arrest Murad as he tries to flee. They also seize the laptop. Youssef is watching from across the street. Within hours, he buys a first-class ticket to Singapore and slips out of the country. Days later, at this Philippine military base, members of the Philippine National Police are interrogating Abdul Murad. He refuses to say much. Police beat him until his ribs break. They extinguish cigarettes in his ears and on his genitals. They force so much water down his throat, he nearly drowns. After a month, he finally cracks. He reveals details of terrorist schemes that he developed with Ramzi Youssef. One was a plot to kill Pope John Paul II. Another was to use an ingenious detonator designed by Youssef to blow up 12 American jetliners over the Pacific Ocean. Murad confesses that he personally was planning to dive bomb a plane into CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. According to this man, Philippine Colonel Rodolfo Mendoza, Murad describes another, far more daring operation. Teams of hijackers would use commercial jetliners as missiles against landmark buildings within the United States.
They had up to 10 Islamic terrorists training in U.S. flight schools. That plot was well in motion, and Ramzi Youssef had it all on his Toshiba laptop. They had up to 7 targets, including the Trade Center, the Pentagon, nuclear facilities, CIA headquarters, the Sears and Transamerica Towers, and the White House.
Colonel Mendoza insists that he shared all this information with the FBI. The FBI acknowledges receiving intelligence from Mendoza, but claims there were no details about the plot that became 9/11. By now, the FBI's $2 million reward for information on Youssef finally yields a tip. Islamabad, Pakistan, February the 7th, 1995. U.S. authorities confirm that Youssef is hiding out in a safe house. The building is owned by Osama bin Laden. A team of American and Pakistani agents races through Islamabad towards the Sukasa guest house.
They literally jumped out of the cars, ran up the steps, kicked in the door of his hotel, and he was laying in bed.
They arrest Youssef and take him into custody. His uncle, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, is in another room of the same Al-Qaeda safe house. But the uncle walks away into the shadows of radical Islam's underground network. And it now becomes Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's mission to carry out the idea, developed with his nephew, for flying commercial planes into American landmarks. Within 36 hours of Youssef's arrest, FBI agents are transporting him by helicopter to a New York City jail to await trial. The pilot passes the Twin Towers. One of the FBI agents lifts Youssef's hood and points towards the World Trade Center. See, it's still standing, he says. Ramzi Youssef replies that if he'd had enough time and money, he would have brought the whole thing down.
Since 2001, over 24,000 people have died at the hands of terrorists. But as the threat evolves, so does our ability to defend against it. Airliners with flares to confuse heat-seeking missiles, guns that can shoot round corners, robots which can sniff out bombs. We investigate the radical and sometimes controversial technologies being developed to defend ourselves against the threat of terrorism. Terrorism Marathon continues next. They've taken the long way round. Now Ewan McGregor and his best mate Charlie tackle the long way down.
I feel like I've been punched.
From the top of Scotland to the tip of Africa.
I just feel like I'm on a ride with my mates.
Same two blokes, brand new bikes, and a lot more adventure. Long Way Down. Sunday at 9 on National Geographic Channel.
They are wonders of construction. Icons that have come to symbolize the cities in which they stand. Now, meet the latest marvel to join their ranks. To celebrate the 29th Olympic Games in China, National Geographic Channel presents the making of a modern engineering masterpiece. Megastructures, the Beijing Olympic Stadium, starts China's Olympic special, Monday at 8.
It's one of the oldest and most controversial storybooks in history. It tells tales of miracles and divine intervention. Yet for many, these stories are more than mere religious fable. They're historic fact. Over 24 hours, we dissect the greatest biblical stories in history in a modern-day quest for the Holy Grail of the Gospel truth. Riddles of the Bible Marathon, next weekend on National Geographic Channel.
Saudi Arabia, May 1995. Egyptian graduate student Mohammed Atta performs a Hajj, the ritual pilgrimage to the holiest sites in Islam. The experience has a profound effect on him. He returns to Hamburg, Germany, but Atta loses interest in his academic work. Radical Islam now dictates his daily routine. As graduation nears, a work-study grant allows him to return to his native Cairo. But when Atta looks for a job, the urban planning graduate can't find one. All he finds is corruption and nepotism, a world he cannot crack.
I should imagine Atta every single time that he went back to Cairo during his stay in Germany, that he got even more and more frustrated. And I think gradually he was there for the taking.
By 1996, Mohammed Atta is already a familiar face at this storefront mosque in Hamburg called Al-Quds. It's a hotbed of radical Islam. Among those coming to the nightly prayers is at least one Al-Qaeda recruiter. Atta takes his place among the rows of angry, alienated young men. They hear fiery imams call out for the blood of Jews, Christians, even Muslims who have strayed from the true path. They are also told that Allah will reward their martyrdom with glories in heaven that include sex with 72 virgins. Jalalabad, Afghanistan, summer 1996. Bin Laden has returned to the country that launched his career as a holy warrior. He's back here because the US and the UN have pressured the government of Sudan to end its cozy arrangement with the Al-Qaeda leader. They kick him out.
So he arrives in Afghanistan in the early summer of 1996, and what does he do? The first thing he does is retreat to a camp outside of Jalalabad, and he writes a very long declaration of war against the United States.
Bin Laden calls for a new holy war to evict US troops from Saudi Arabia. He intends to launch this jihad from his base in Afghanistan.
It sent shockwaves through us. It was pretty clear from the first that Bin Laden meant what he said, but it didn't catch much attention.
September 1996. A radical Islamic sect called the Taliban seizes control of the Afghan government and its capital city, Kabul. In exchange for millions of dollars in Al-Qaeda funding, the Taliban agree to provide a haven for Bin Laden and his organization. The CIA's newly created Bin Laden unit learns that Al-Qaeda has a military committee planning operations against US interests worldwide, and that bin Laden has tried to acquire nuclear and chemical weapons. At his new headquarters, bin Laden starts taking meetings with terrorists looking to get their pet projects funded.
They waited for freelancers to come by and say, listen, I have a project. I'm going to attack this, or I'm going to blow up that, or I'm going to assassinate this person. And if they really liked the project a lot, then they would fund it quite a bit, and it sort of operated like a franchise.
One of these freelancers is Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. Sometime in the middle of 1996, he reunites with fellow Afghan war veteran Osama bin Laden at bin Laden's camp in Tora Bora, Afghanistan. Since the arrest a year earlier of his nephew, Ramzi Youssef, he has been identified by the FBI as a terrorist. In fact, US intelligence will begin referring to him by his initials, KSM. He fled to Afghanistan just as FBI agents were closing in. KSM pitches bin Laden several ideas he developed with his nephew. Among them is a highly ambitious plot to fly commercial jets into American landmark buildings, including the World Trade Center. Bin Laden listens to the idea. He knows that if it were to succeed and the US retaliated against Al-Qaeda, it would be exactly what he wants. A battle with the great Satan on his own turf. Together, KSM and bin Laden will begin to develop the details for what they call the Plains operation. They will train teams of men to hijack US commercial airliners and use them as missiles to attack symbols of American power. And before long, bin Laden will start proclaiming his jihad directly to the American people.
We do not differentiate between those dressed in military uniforms and civilians.
He said, I predict a black day for the United States, a day after which the United States will not be the same as we know it.
In the years to come, the Al-Qaeda leader will provide a number of signs that such a black day is indeed coming. Just how black a day is something Americans are unable to imagine.